So just a short video with a couple of techniques that I used way too much this year, and I will probably use them also way too much next year. The first one is sending a voice through a reverb and then through distortion. This creates this huge distorted lead sound. So I have here two oscillators and white noise being mixed into a filter. This is going through a low pass filter that, by the way, you can see that the cutoff is moving. I can control it with MIDI. I have here a MIDI controller. And now this is going through a reverb, and you can experiment, of course, with different reverbs and having the dry signal or without the dry signal, just the wet. And after the reverb, this is going through a distortion or distraction, in this case, saturation and folding with volt debriatus. Again, you can experiment with different distortion. You can experiment with feedback loops. This works really well also in hardware. And after the distortion, it goes through another low pass filter just to have control over the amplitude and timbre at once. And also this here, you can see the frequency is also mapped to the same controller. And then you can choose if you want another reverb, if you want another, or if you want a delay in the reverb, or you can really experiment with this chain and put all sorts of different modules in between. Basically, the main idea will sound like this. And again, this works really well also in hardware. So again, this can work really nicely also in hardware. Here I have the Instruo Psych. I can play it with the Kiste Pro. It's out of the frame, you cannot really see it. This is going through a low pass filter from Volt. From there, it's going through a nice reverb, the Desmodius Versio from Noise Engineering. And then after the reverb, this is going through a distortion. This is the 1U Guillotine from Ritual Electronics. Really, really nice distortion module in 1U, which is quite nice. From there, it's going through another low pass filter. This is the Freak, again from Volt, a stereo, in this case, a stereo low pass filter. And then here, just for fun, I'm sending this through the Mimeophone for some delay, and it's going to the computer for a nice, huge, lush reverb with the Valhalla Supermassive. Now I can control both filters, both low pass filters together with the IntelliGel planar, right? I'm sending the Y output and I'm splitting it once to the first low pass filter and one to the stereo one. And basically it will sound like this. Another technique is mixing sample and hold with the pitch sequence, and there are a few variations you can try. Also, this works really well in hardware. So here I have a voice, I have a triangle wave going through a wave shaper, a Wolf, right, with some modulation coming from Oct, modulating the envelope, modulating the timbre, and there is also some delay involved. It will sound like this. Right now the sequencer is the SEC3. In this case, it has it's set with just 8 steps, right? So they are repeating those 8 steps, and we have a repetitive 8-step sequence. Right, but what I have here, I have the random module from VCV, which is basically in this case a sample and hold. And I'm triggering it with a divided clock. I have a clock divided by 16, right? So the sequence will play 4 times, and then the sample and hold will be triggered, and again 4 times, and then again it will be triggered. And then I'm mixing the sample and hold together with the pitch sequence with a mixer. If you are doing this in hardware, make sure you are using a DC coupled mixer so it can also work with pitch information. And then after the mixer, this is going to the quantizer, right after the mixer, after they are both being mixed. So now if I add this random signal, again it will be triggered with the clock division. So it will basically transpose the sequence after a few repetitions, and this will create a nice movement. Right? So the movement of the notes will still be the same, but it will be transposed. Right, and again, there are a few variations here you can try. For example, instead of a divided clock, I can use the first gate output of the sequencer, right, this one here, and then each cycle will be transposed. So again, it will add a more frequent variation. Another thing you can try, and this again, I do this a lot, is instead of using the gate output, I can use the same multiplied clock or the same clock I'm using for the sequence, but one of the gate outputs will open the VCA, will open the level of this sample and hold, right? We have here a CV input for each channel, so I can basically have this usually closed, but only on one step it will be open, and this one step will always be randomized. We will get 7 steps that are the same, and one step will be randomized. So for example, step number 7. Right, so here I have an 8-step sequence with a max slicer from Befaco. This is my main sequence. This is sequencing both Neoni from Instruo and the Basimilus from Noise Engineering. I'm mixing them into one voice. This is going through the Mimiophone for some delay and reverb. It will sound like this. Right, and now here, instead of using sample and hold, I'm using the voltage block from Aleco. I have the first sequence running randomly, so it's basically a random signal, and it has also a built-in clock divider, so I'm dividing the clock of just the first sequence by 16, and this I will mix together with the max slicer, so both pitch sequences together with the DC coupled mixer. In this case, it's the ST mix from Befaco. Again, you have to make sure that you are using a DC coupled mixer so it can work also with pitch information and it will not filter those signals out. Right, and from the mixer, after the mixer, I'm going through a quantizer. This one is the quantizer from ADEC, and this is sequencing my voices. So if I bring it in now, this random sequence, again, it will randomly transpose the sequences together with the clock division. Right now, since the max slicer is a switch, I can inject random pitch to each one of its inputs. Let me quickly show you this. I have here another sequence on the voltage block with a different division. This will go, let's say, to step number 7. Right? Now if I go back to the first sequence here, I can use this also as a performative tool, right? If I have this mixer, if I have this mix all the way down, and then I can perform this. Okay, now if you watch my videos, if you watch my live streams, you know I've been using this trick, this technique all the time, basically sending a voice through a low pass filter and a copy of this voice through some sort of a high pass filter or a frequency splitter or something, and sending only the high frequencies to a delay. I'm using this all the time. I'm doing this all the time. Again, this will work also really nicely in hardware. So what I have here is, again, two oscillators and noise being mixed right into a low pass filter. Again, also here I have control with MIDI. This you can do also with a sequencer, of course, and all sorts of different ways. Also this voice I'm playing with MIDI, and this is basically now going just to the mixer. Right, a basic subtractive voice going after the filter also to a VCA. And now what I will do, I will send a copy of this voice after the VCA, so after the low pass filter, through a high pass filter, right, which I have here. So this will go to another filter. This is a high pass filter, and from there to a delay. Now the delay, if you have only a wet output like I have here, you can use just the wet output. If not, just take the mix all the way up. You don't need another copy basically of the same voice. You just want the wet signal, you just want the delayed signal. Right, so what will happen when the filter, when the low pass filter, this filter is closed, there will be less content going through the delay, because we have a high pass filter there, right, which is just letting the high frequencies pass. So basically this would add another layer to the sound, and of course to this reverb voice, to this delayed voice, sorry, add a lot of reverb as well. So now when I play it, it will have another dimension, but it will not interfere with the low frequencies. So here I have a 7-step sequence coming from the voltage block, sequencing Neoni, the Basimilus, and the STO for make noise. I'm mixing all of them into a low pass filter. This is Vorg from Volt, an analog low pass filter. In this case, it will sound like this. Right. And now again, to add another layer to it, I'm splitting this signal, and it's going through a high pass filter. This is another one from Volt. So again, only the high frequencies will go to the rest of the chain, and the rest of the chain is the DLD, the dual looping delay. From there it's going to planar 2 for panning modulation left and right, and a nice reverb from the Desmodus Versio, right? So it will sound like this. Right, again, only when I open the low pass filter, actually the high frequencies will go to the delay and the reverb. So I can do also something like this. Right. I have here also a nice lead sound with the TSL, again going through a reverb. In this case I'm using the reverb for Magneto. Distortion, again guillotine, another filter just like we did before. And that was it. I hope this was a bit helpful or even inspiring. I'm going to play this a bit. Thank you for watching, and cheers.